welcome to another tutorial video. So today's tutorial is kind of an actual tutorial but also a little bit of an experiment as well, because I was playing with this foil. I really wanted to try this Deco Arts foil that I bought after I'd filmed my Wordies video. I bought this one. It's got like a shattered effect and then there's like different rainbow sheets in there as well, and I really wanted to try the rainbow, but I also wanted to try this technique. I know rainbow's not that like typical for a Christmas card, but I think it still works though. So for the tutorial I'm gonna show you with some copper colours onto brown card. This is actually brown. It looks black on there but it is actually a really dark brown. And I thought I would do that because then I can show you with a hot foil. So this is a toner activated foil and this one is a hot or heat activated foil. So I thought we'd just see what the differences are to see if we can get this to work. And there's also another difference. When I did this technique, I just cut the die that I had used out of cardstock and then I inked through it with Flake and glitter glue from Cosmic Shimmer, and this was the result that I got when I then added foil over the top. And then with that piece of cardstock that I had like used as a stencil, I flipped the cardstock over and pressed it onto the card and I got this kind of result. This is with foil and quite a bit of mica powder as well, because I didn't want to waste a whole nother piece of foil just to foil over this, so I did use mica powders in here as well. But for this version, we're trying the different foil, but we're also trying a different way of cutting out the die. So this is the beautiful die. It's a Sue Wilson one from her new Festive collection. It was in the June release. It's like a Poinsettia panel, and it's very similar to her embossing folder that she brought out quite a few years ago now. It's a big A4 embossing folder. I absolutely love the design on that. So I was so glad to see that she'd brought it out in like a die form because it's beautiful. But anyway, this version, I have said this in a couple of videos but I don't know if you've seen them yet. I've been experimenting with trying to make my own stencils and this was one of the reasons why, and I figured out that if you put two sheets of cardstock in a laminating pouch, when you laminate it, one sticks to one side and one sticks to the other side, so you end up with a shiny side on one side but just the cardstock on the other side, and you can just about die cut it. So it was a little bit fiddly. There are some areas where I had to snip out the detail because it just got too messed up. But it is doable. You can get it to die cut, but this, I mean, this was taking it a bit far. It's really intricate to try and die cut out of something that has a plastic coating on it, but it did work. So this time I'm going to try it with this. So my idea is, because we're going through the stencil and we're going to get our excess onto here, rather than some of the glue soaking into the cardstock, hopefully more of the glue is going to stay on this, so when we flip it over we'll get an even better impression for our like negative version of it as well. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe because it's got a slick surface we won't have so much of the glue like blobbing under the detail a little bit as well, so we might get a cleaner version for this version of the card as well. So those are the two cards that I already created, just playing with this technique, seeing if it would actually work, because I wasn't sure if it would, because well, you know, with all of the foils, this one is a toner foil, this one is a hot foil, but every foil that you have, so any foil in your stash, should work for this. I am just going to test it with this one just to make sure, but any foil should work because we're just using adhesive with it. Or if you don't have foils, then your gilding flakes or your Aurora flakes would work brilliantly for this as well, or glitter, or just mica powder, or so many different things that you can stick onto glue. But the reason why I wanted to try to make my own stencil to do this with is Flake and glitter glue is very sticky and it doesn't dry until something lands on it. It literally stays sticky for ages. Like, I used to keep my little bit of cut and dry foam on a piece of the release paper from a double-sided sheet. I used to keep that on my windowsill and it would still be sticky like literally 6 months or more later, unless dust or something had collected on it. It would still be sticky. It's that sticky of a sticky glue. It will not dry until something is stuck to it, and then, you know, the sticky will be gone because something is stuck to it to cover up the stickiness. So that is why I don't want to use it on one of my stencils, because I'm too lazy to try and clean it really well. You can obviously stamp with this. I've shown that in the past. You can apply it to a little bit of cut and dry foam and stamp with it, but again, you do need to wash your stamp a couple of times to get that sticky residue off. And if you are a little bit lazier, like I am, when it comes to cleaning up things, you don't really want the hassle of that. So it's quite nice to be able to make your own die cut stencil to use it with, and you can also make your own stamps to use it with by die cutting from funky foam and then using them as stamps to use your flake and glitter glue with as well. So there's ways around of getting the stamped or stenciled effect with the flake and glitter glue without actually making one of your stamps or stencils really sticky. So I thought I'd just say that as well. For this technique, I've decided to go with this colour of foil, which I don't think it has a name on it, annoyingly. Some of the other ones say it down here, but this one doesn't actually say it on. So I think it's like a coppery, bronzy, metallic, browny kind of colour. I'm not 100% sure where I bought it. I probably thought, oh, that's an unusual colour that I haven't seen before, so I probably decided to get it because of that. But I bought it years ago and have hardly used it. So I thought that colour would go nicely. And then I thought to make them look totally different from these ones that I did as a practice, just to show you how mixing up the card that you work onto and the foil that you use can make it look completely different. I thought I'd go with Dark Roast Coffee Creative Expressions Foundations cardstock because it's a really deep brown. I mean, look, if you look against my mat, it does look black, but it is more brown in person. It is coming across a little bit blacker on the camera, but it is more of a brown, and I thought this would go really nicely with this kind of coppery tone. It would stand out nicely as much as a colour against white stands out. And then to finish off any areas that are still left sticky, once you finish doing this, you see I managed to do this just with the one piece of foil because I didn't want to waste too much of it. So that one is using, you know, the whole piece of foil, but this one I went back with excess bits and like dabbed it over the top, so there was still some adhesive left that was sticky. So to kind of cover that up, I went back with one of the ARTEZA mica powders. This one is crystal white, to actually give it that kind of effect. It filled in the rest of the pattern, but you can only really see it when it hits the light. So for this version, I don't know which one I'm going to use yet. I might use a mixture of all three, but I picked out three of the browny coppery colours from the ARTEZA set. So I've got burgundy, wineberry red and chocolate brown as well. Now all of these mica powders do look different when they're on a lighter or darker surface, so you might get an unexpected result when you're doing this if you've picked a mica powder that's got a different colour of mica than what you can see from the naked eye. When it goes on a darker colour of cardstock, it might, like, for example, I think maybe it's the wineberry red, it shows more of like a green. So I don't know what results we're going to get with these, but those are the mica powders that I picked out to kind of fill in the excess of the adhesive. So let's move some of these bits and pieces out of the way that we don't need, and let's start with this technique and see what we can come up with. So I'm going to work onto a piece of scrap paper just so I don't get my glass mat really sticky. I'll move those off to the side because they're casting a little bit of a shadow. And then we're going to start with one of our pieces of our dark roast, I think it might be dark roast espresso maybe rather than coffee. But anyway, a really dark brown cardstock. And then we're going to take our homemade stencil, and I think I'm going to go this direction because I want it to go portrait down the card, or we could change our mind and do it landscape later on, but I want it to be more to one side than the other. And I have cut this piece of card bigger than my intended, you know, front panel of a card, so that if I get it a bit wonky I can straighten it up if I want to. So I think I'm going to go about there with my stencil, and we are going to have to keep holding this down because it is a die cut stencil as well. You know, sometimes when you use an intricate die, the cardstock kind of wobbles up and down where, you know, it's been forced through to be able to cut all of the details. That obviously happens when you've put the plastic on the top, probably more than if you have just cut with cardstock. So we might get a little bit of blobby impressions, but I think it would give like a nice, like, aged, grungy kind of look to it. So with your flake and glitter glue, you can cut the top of the nozzle off like a normal bottle of your Cosmic Shimmer. However, I tend to keep these both in the same place, and I don't want to accidentally pick my flake and glitter glue over my Cosmic Shimmer glue, so I tend to just unscrew the lid of the bottle and squeeze a bit out of there rather than using it from the nozzle. But you can do whatever you want to do. I just don't want to accidentally pick up the wrong glue for sticking things down, so I know that the one that isn't opened is my flake and glitter glue and the one that is opened is my Cosmic Shimmer glue. So I'm going to take the lid off of this. I am literally at the very end of my original bottle. I could cut this open and scrape some of this out, and I probably will do that when I'm not filming, but I don't want to have to, you know, keep stopping and starting filming to clean up scissors that I've got glue all over and stuff from cutting the bottle open. But you will be able to still get dregs out of a bottle as well. I'm just going to start a new bottle. And you can see actually, even my old bottle, I haven't cut the top off. That's just how I kept it like that. So let's unscrew the lid of this and then just put a little bit out on here. We might put it on my scrap paper. I'll put it on the scrap paper. I do often work on the release paper of a double-sided sheet as well, so you can definitely do that too. But I'll just put a little bit out on the printer paper. And then you just want to like prime your sponge. So this is basically going to be your ink pad. And I only ever use a small piece of cut and dry foam because inevitably I do leave this, you know, stuck on a piece of cardstock or a piece of the adhesive backing sheet so that I can use it again, and it will get stuck to something that I don't want it to get stuck to. So I do tend to discard my foam after I've used it for like a few projects in that week, just because I don't want it to accidentally get stuck to something important and ruin something that I've spent ages working on. So yeah, that you just use a small piece of foam, but you can use whatever kind of applicator you want really. I just like the cut and dry foam. So I'm going to position this on my piece of card, and then we're literally just going to pounce through. We don't want to take too long doing this because this is glue, so it could potentially start to stick the stencil to the cardstock and you might get some little tears on your cardstock. But also it's kind of weird. You don't want to spend too long doing it, but you also don't need to rush because, as I said before, it's not going to dry until something lands on it. So we can go a little bit quicker for this application, but when we come to put our foil on, we can, you know, waffle on for ages and it won't have dried. So I'm just going to go light-handed and tap this through the openings. When you're working on a darker colour of cardstock, you will be able to see that the adhesive goes on a slightly blue colour. I probably should zoom you in, 1 second. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the camera. I think you can just about see. It goes on like a blue colour, and then once it dries it will be completely clear. And actually, as we're doing this, you want to make sure you go off the edges a little bit, just because we want to try and utilise the excess adhesive that's going to be on our plastic covered stencil from using our laminator. So we're just going to tap all over this. Sorry if I go off screen, but I want to be a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to tap all over the rest of it, giving hopefully a nice even coverage of the flake and glitter glue all over there. Now this does give a really different look to normal foiling because it gives a textured look because we've pounced it with a sponge. So I can pick that off, and you can now, we have got a little bit of blobbing effect, but you can now see that it's kind of a little bit blue, and actually working onto a darker colour is better because you can actually see where you've been, whereas onto the white I couldn't really tell where I had been. So we'll leave that one, and then whilst this is still nice and juicy on here, I'm going to press this onto this piece of card, and I'm actually going to just take a piece of kitchen roll just to press on the back of it, so that I don't get sticky all over my fingers. But again, you don't want to spend too long doing this, just in case the glue starts to stick and it wants to just rip your cardstock. But because we did it onto the shiny side of that, it has worked really nicely, I think. So hopefully that's going to give some good results when we put the foil on it, but we don't have to rush adding the foil, so we can actually clean up, move things out of the way. Now this stencil, I'm hoping, because we've got the slick surface on here, that we could actually potentially use this again for some other projects too. So hopefully, you know, it's one that we can keep using. It is obviously going to be a bit sticky, but we can probably get a few uses using our adhesive with it. So I'm going to put this off to one side. Then we can bring back both of these pieces in, and we can get our foil going on them, because I think that's just about dry, that adhesive, and there's a little bit of a blobby area just here that's not quite dry, because you can kind of see the blue effect on there still, but you can just waft it around a little bit to get it to dry. And I really do want to try the mica powders on some of the areas as well, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, where I just used the one piece of foil to do the main one. And then I tried to use the scrap pieces left over from the foil to do the other one. Now, this foil isn't as wide as the original foil. Sorry, I should zoom you out a little bit. The hot foil isn't as wide a roll as the original foil, so actually we are going to have more left over to be able to do the technique with. So I'm just going to get my scissors and trim off a piece that is as long as our cardstock. And don't feel like you're wasting your foil if you do have some left over. As you saw, I didn't chuck this away because I could still use that for something as well. I could take one of the toner sheets from Wow, the Fab Foiler toner sheets, and I could actually put that onto there and run it through my laminator and get that off. And especially if I hadn't have used this on the other one, you would have got more of a better pattern of the poinsettias. This would just give you a bit of a random effect, but it would look really lovely as well. So I could make use of that too. I probably won't show it in a video, but I definitely can make use of it as well. So we've got these done now. I'll move this one out of the way and we'll work on the original one, which was the intended kind of pattern to get. And the other one is kind of more like the extra, that hopefully having the laminated stencil works better than the other one, although the other one was pretty good. So now we're going to take our foil. I'm going to go to one edge so we're not wasting it, and press that into position. And you can see automatically you're getting some texture in there where it is sticking to the adhesive. And we can just burnish this in as much as you feel like you need to. So burnish this down really nicely. You can come in and be a little bit gentle, but you can also rub over with like the curved side of your glide folder. So hopefully this is going to give some good results, and it looks like it's going to work. So I'm pretty certain this technique is going to work with any foil that you have. You don't even have to know if it's a hot foil or if it's a toner foil or if it is just one that you're supposed to use with adhesive anyway, because they do make those as well. But any foil that you have should work for this, and hopefully this will prove it. Yes, so any foil that you own will work for this technique. And look at those kind of results that you can get from this. So we're not 100% perfect here, but I think that is pretty good. Look at that. That is really lovely. And just using a die cut to create your own stencil, you've got that beautiful pattern. And look how different it looks. Having the copper onto the dark brown, then the rainbow onto the white. Gives a completely different feel. A nice vintage kind of Christmas sort of feel to this one. So that is the results we've gotten from this. There might still be some exposed adhesive on here that we can catch with the mica powder. So we're going to put some foil on the other one first, and then we'll come back to this to do mica powder to them both at the same time. So this piece here you could definitely use as well, because this is hot foil. Actually, I'll show it on the mat, you can probably see it better. Because this is hot foil, you can do the technique where you put a metal plate onto your hot foiling machine, and then you can put your foil pretty side down, then put some cardstock on top, then use however many shims that you feel is necessary, because you've got to make up the thickness of what would have been a hot foiling die, and then you can run it through your machine and you should be able to get this impression off of there as well, which again would give you kind of like a distressed poinsettia look, because you've got all of these little speckles left in the poinsettia design as well. But for this I don't want to waste too much foil, so I am just going to go back over with that same piece that we've already used some from, and see how much foil we can get onto this second one. And we can just burnish over to get good contact, and then peel that off. It is sticking more because some of the adhesive is sticking to the clear carrier sheet of the foil, but look at that. Doesn't that look so cool? And then we can use a little bit more. And this actually, using the bit that you've already used on the previous one, helps you to get a really random effect of foil. So we could have gone straight in with a real bit of foil, like a full piece of foil, and probably gotten a pretty complete kind of image. But doing it this way, you are actually getting more of a random effect. So more of that mica powder is going to show up when we do that part of the technique as well. And you can come back in and press in any more areas that you think might need some. Now you see here, this part was less on our actual impression, so this part is then less on our reverse image of it as well. So it does really depend how much adhesive you're getting down onto your card and through your stencil and everything, but I'm sure you can play around with this technique and get better results or different results as well. I do really like how this has turned out, so really, really pretty. Gorgeous poinsettia design, but I reckon there is more left there, more adhesive left there, and we can keep this to use for other projects as well, but I reckon there is more adhesive left there. So I'm going to bring our pieces of scrap paper back in, and then let's go with the original one first. And I think I am just going to use a mixture of these three. I'm going to go with burgundy, wineberry red and chocolate brown, and I'm just going to use a mixture, and I've just got a soft brush. Let's go with a little bit of the chocolate brown first and just get a little bit on the bristles, not too much, but enough. That was hardly anything. And we can actually dab some of this on both of them at the same time. Oops, making a mess now. We can put some on both at the same time as well. So we can just dab some little areas onto here, and actually as you're dabbing this on you can feel the brush sticking in areas, so you know that there is actually some leftover adhesive on there, because you never know you know, like how much the foil will pick up just with you pressing on it. There's inevitably going to be areas where you didn't press as much as you could have done to get that foil to stick. So that is the chocolate brown. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the wineberry, which I think has got like a green mica in it, this one. And you can just tap from a height, or you can actually tap the brush onto there, depending how you like to apply your mica powders. You can do whatever you like. And we'll just tap some over the top. You don't really need too much mica, but I just want to get a couple of colours on here. It has got green mica in that one. I can see it. Yeah, I think you can just about see there's green there. So we can tap that off. I tap it on my bin usually. And then we'll get a bit of burgundy. I just thought all of these colours would go really nicely with like the coppery browny sort of tones. But you can go for a completely contrast colour as well if you want to. Whatever you want to do really. So a little bit more. I don't want to get too much out. Sometimes I go really heavy-handed with it. But I mean, mica powders do last such a long time. And if you did make your watercolours with any of your mica powders, if you followed that video that I did, you could then also splatter with the same colour of watercolour that you created with your mica powders as well, to give like a splattered effect in the background. So let's go with the original one first, and just do like little circular motions, blending in all of that mica powder into any leftover adhesive that might be there. Just swirling it around, making sure it sort of sticks into all of the different areas. And we should get a nice variegated effect. I don't know how much we're going to be able to tell between the three colours, but we should hopefully get a little bit of a mixture. And you should be able to see here so much more of the pattern appearing, with the fine powder catching all of the areas that we didn't get with the foil. Especially because we used the scrappy bit of foil that we'd already used on the previous card as well. So just keep swirling it around, and then once you're happy, you can pick up your card, tap off excess, and use your soft brush to get off some excess as well. And then hopefully you can see how it's filled in a bit more of the detail, and we've got some of those mica powders showing in different areas as well. So I've no idea which mica powder was which, but it has filled in the different areas. You can see on that leaf there, you see we only had a patchy kind of bit of foil, but now it's actually filled in the entire leaf design. So there really are little tiny, like microscopic kind of areas that you don't even notice are there, that you can catch with that mica powder. So really pretty, that one. And I do think that is actually a better result than just using the cardstock stencil. Do you think it looks a little bit more of a crisp impression? Maybe it's just the colour makes it look different. But anyway, whatever way you want to try it, it will work. Now, because I've shown you both ways, so that's quite nice to be able to see both ways. And then this one, we can wipe off any excess, and then use our fluffy brush to go across the surface. Okay, and then you can see that more of that design again has gotten filled in to give it a beautiful kind of look. Now, do we get a better result between using it with the plastic covered stencil? To be honest, there's not really much difference. So you might as well actually just cut it from the cardstock stencil, and then you could actually foil the cardstock stencil, and then you'd have that as well. So yeah, to be honest, just use the cardstock one. Don't bother with the plastic covered one, because it takes so much more time to poke all the pieces out when you've got the plastic from the laminating pouch and the cardstock to cut through. So yeah, that's quite good actually, that's shown us that both the hot foil and the toner foil both work. So pretty much any foil that you have should work, or gilding flakes, glitter, mica powders, anything like that that would stick to this. But then it also shows that it doesn't really matter if you just cut your die from cardstock and use it, or whether you actually try to make it more of a robust stencil. Doesn't seem to matter at all. So whatever you want to try with this technique, I reckon it will work. So I'm going to clear up my desk a little bit, and then I'll be back to finish off the cards with you. Okay, so to finish off these two cards, I'm going to trim them down, because as I said before, I started with a slightly larger piece of cardstock so that I could trim off any extra edge pieces that I felt like I needed to, and trim that down to there. Then I've got this one. I quite like the distance that is away from there, so I'm going to go and use that as the line. And then which end do I want to trim more of? Let's straighten up that edge, and I think I will trim off this bottom edge. So we've got our panels cut down. We need our card blanks to fit. I'm going with a white card blank because I just prefer white card blanks. Whenever I try and make a card that's not on a white card blank, I don't seem to like how it turns out, so I always just go back to the white card blanks. And then this one as well. Cut maybe not much off. Is that enough? I'm making fingerprints everywhere at the moment because I didn't dust off the excess of that mica powder. So I will show you a way of doing that in a second, once I finish making a mess and cutting. I know I've cut that too small. I've got to cut this a little bit shorter now. There we go, that'll work. Okay, so another way of getting rid of more of that excess is to use a dry dusting cloth. So I've got these pledge ones that I tend to use, and you don't have to use the whole thing. You can take one out because they're quite big, and you can just get your scissors and trim a portion off. These are really lovely, they smell like lemons, but you can just trim a piece off. And you can keep this on your desk, you know, and keep using it. You don't have to chuck it just from one use. So you definitely can keep using those for a long time. And this will just help you get all of that excess mica powder off of anything. So you can see that's clean because I just got a new one out. But if I wipe over this, we should hopefully see that it's picked up. Yeah, you can see it's picked up all of the leftover mica. And we can pick it off the card blank that I made a mess on too as well. And then we'll take all of the excess off of this one too. I think it's just because mica powders are such fine particles that they just want to like statically cling to everything. So just using a dry dusting cloth is really great for that. It's also good for glitter and embossing powder and gilding flakes and stuff as well. So these are our two cards. We can decide if we want them to be landscape or portrait. Last time I did this one landscape and this one portrait, so we could go this one portrait and this one landscape to make them look a little bit different. And for the sentiments on these, I have picked out some Sue Wilson ones. I can't remember again which, I think it was maybe the June one these are out of, either the June or the July. And this one, I really like this. It comes all together, but it's two separate dies in the set, and it says, I'm going to stack two up together, that's why it looks a bit doubly, but it says thinking of you this festive season. I just thought that's a really lovely sentiment to send at Christmas, especially if it's somebody who doesn't actually celebrate Christmas but you just want to let them know that you're thinking about them. And then there's also this one, which also comes as a two-parter, and this one says A Joyful Christmas, which you could just definitely use by itself, but it also says To You and Yours, so you can actually have To You and Yours on there as well, or you can just do the A Joyful Christmas. I might put the Joyful Christmas further up and then have that about there maybe. Or we could centre them both underneath each other. I think I like them centred underneath each other actually. I like those offset from each other. So we can take our glue and stack these up so we've got double sentiments, just to make them a little bit thicker. And because this card is really simple, it just makes it look like a little bit extra special that you've got a thicker kind of sentiment on there. It looks more like an embellishment rather than just a single die cut piece of card, which I think is always nice. I've really been into stacking up sentiments for all of my Christmas cards this year. You've probably noticed. I'm not sure when this one is going up in my Advent series, but you've probably noticed that I've been enjoying the stacked sentiments. So there we go, we've got that one. Then let's do this festive season. I'll speed the rest of these up because it's a little bit boring. So I stuck all of those together, haven't stuck them on yet, because I want to decide first, before I stick them on, how I want to embellish them. So do I want to just leave them as they are, or do I think they need a little bit of extra embellishment? So originally I was thinking either a Nouveau drop or some tiny little gems to emphasise the middles of the poinsettias, especially on this one. I feel it's more evident on this one, because this one we have got a little bit of definition around where those berries are because of the deboss detail that's in that die. When you do the reverse and you flipped it, you kind of have a little bit of definition around where the deboss areas were, whereas on these ones, because they're debossed, they're just completely not there. So I was thinking Nouveau drops or gems, but then because I've done the white as the sentiment, I was also thinking maybe some kind of white gem would work better. I used these on one of my Advent videos earlier on filming them, but you might not have seen it yet, I'm not sure. But they're just like pearl snowflake things. Me and Mum got a pack of them and shared them between us. But I don't know if they're going to go with the style, because these are more on the masculine side, I would say. But I still think they would look nice. This one is our landscape, so I want the top of the card to be like that and the bigger gap at the top of the card. So I'm going to stick it on this way round. We've got that. And then this one is our portrait card. You can do them both landscape or portrait. I just think it's quite nice to show you some different orientations of cards in case you hadn't thought to do it for that you know, direction. And then this one I want it to go up this way, and again I've got a top folding card, so I'm going to go like this. Okay, I've got a little bit of an uneven border on that one, but I don't think anybody's really going to notice, especially because it's on the bottom edge. So we're going to keep those like that. Then I'm going to completely decorate one first, I think. So I'm going to go for a Joyful Christmas. And again, little dabs of glue all over the back, just like you do when you're stacking your sentiments or shadowing them. You can definitely shadow them if you'd rather. If you wanted a sentiment that was less stark than the white sentiment, you could put a white shadow and then maybe put a mirror card one, or you could have foiled your sentiment as well, either using that flake and glitter glue or getting one of those Fab Foiler solid sheets from WoW and foiling. Actually no, that wouldn't work because we used hot foil, but you could definitely put some of that flake and glitter glue over the top of a die cut or over a piece of card, foil it and then die cut it. Whatever you want to do, or even just double-sided adhesive. Double-sided adhesive, that foil again, peel it off and then die cut it, and then that would work as well if you wanted a matching foil colour. Or you could use the flake and glitter glue or double-sided adhesive and put the mica powders on as well. So tons of ways of finishing it off. I just thought a nice bright white sentiment would stand out really nicely from these cards. So that's why I went with that. And it also ties in the white from my card blank, because I know I'm always going to use white card blanks because that's just what I prefer. So we can stick our main sentiment down there. Then I want to put the big white snowflake here. And then one of those small like little crystal ball kind of ones. And then a tiny little heart. I'm just referring back to my photo on my phone so that I can see exactly where I want to place things. And then I had a crystal ball kind of one down here with a couple of small of those as well. One there and then one here. I'm not hoping not too far away for you. There we go, it's a bit better. And then we had another big snowflake on this side, roughly about here, and then a crystal and the heart as well. So that finishes off the first one with all of our little decorations. I think they look really nice being in white actually because they pop out, and we'll come back and do a few little tiny Nouveau drops on that in a second, but we'll do this one first. So I want to do Thinking of You this festive season. So again, tiny little dabs of glue on the back, and then we'll tap it off on our hand to get off the excess so it doesn't squidge out onto the card. So roughly about there. Thinking of You, and then this festive season's going to slot in really nicely there. I love how Sue Wilson lays out her sentiments. They always just fit so perfectly together, especially when they're a two-part kind of sentiment, or even when they are separate ones that aren't actually designed to go together. They always work so nicely. All of the different fonts that she picks for her sentiments always work brilliantly together, whether it's a noble one, a shadowed one, one of these mini expressions. They all work so nicely together. So that is our sentiment on this one. Then we're going to go with the large snowflake pearl item there. I like putting them point top to bottom, but you can put them whatever way around you want, or any embellishment that you have. That could be a snowflake sequin. I do have some white snowflake sequins somewhere, but I just look for them, but they're not in my little drawer of Christmas embellishments, so they must be somewhere else, and I'm not 100% sure where, so I went with those instead because I knew where they were. I could only find my silver sequins. So there we go, we've got another big one. Then another one of these beautiful gems, and then that gorgeous heart as well. I love those heart gems. I've got them in a few different colours. So pretty. And then a couple more of those beautiful crystals, a really large one, and then a slightly smaller one as well. So that is the second card done, with all of our gems on there and our beautiful foiling and mica powders in the background. Just really simple Christmas cards that do give more of a masculine kind of feel. If you are struggling for a slightly more masculine Christmas card design, that would work quite nicely, this kind of one. And you can switch up the colours as well. It could be, you know, do it in their favourite colour, like a green or a red, or blues and silvers, all sorts of different colour combinations. Then I am just going to go in with a little bit of the Copper Penny Nouveau drop, and just check it on a bit of scrap first, and then just do some tiny little Nouveau drops. I think the actual design does have the 3 dots in the centre of each of the poinsettias, So I'm just going to go with 3 little tiny Nuvo drops. And the reason why you want to swirl, I think you can probably tell from up there. I can't really look up and do it at the same time, but I think you can kind of see what I'm doing. If you swirl the bottle as you're doing these drops, metallic drops have that beautiful mica in them. And if you swirl them, when they dry, you can sometimes see that swirl appear in them. So I just tend to get into a habit of doing that, just in case it does appear on the final design. It looks quite nice. So few more to do. I think it just finishes it off, because in the actual die design you do have those debossing berries in there, and in another design which I don't think I have actually filmed anything on, actually I think I was just doing it as an experiment, I did actually use a screw hole punch to punch out the little holes on the piece to make it into a stencil to do some ink blending through, but I don't think I have done that as a video yet, so that might be something in the future. Probably not this CRaFTi Advent, unless one of my other ideas doesn't work out as I planned it to, then I might do it. But yeah, you can definitely do whatever you like to kind of fill in those beautiful poinsettia centres. And I think it's fine on this one, because as I said, you can kind of see they're more defined on here because you've actually got that debossing. You know, it's gone on the raised part, so even though they're not die cut, those little berries, they're debossed, so the glue didn't touch them, so it gave you an impression of it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video showing you how to create your own stencil and use your flake and glitter glue with a little piece of cut and dry foam through your stencils to then use your foil and your toner foil or your hot foil, or should be any foil will work for this technique, or glitter or gilding flakes or aurora flakes or mica powders, even shimmer powders and pixie sparkles, pixie bursts and stuff would work. You could do that onto white and then spritz it with water, and then the powders would burst out as well, and it would give a completely different result too. So that might be another tutorial later down the line in the year with not using Christmassy stuff as well. So so many different ideas how you could convert or take on this kind of tutorial and do all sorts of other things with it as well. And just think of all the possibilities with all the dies you have in your stash, or stencils. If you don't mind spending the time cleaning a stencil to get the sticky residue off from the flake and glitter glue, then by all means just use your stencils. I'm just very lazy, so I'd rather do something that doesn't require me to wash my stencil thoroughly. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. Hopefully you're enjoying CRaFTi Advent as well. Not sure how many more there are to come after this one, but I really hope you're enjoying them. So Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!